Strong supporting cast in the various shapes and sizes of the historic saloons. Ford Anglias and Mustangs among the famous names turning a few heads. And of course the drivers, only too happy to renew a rivalry stretching back 30 years or so.
I think I got really a little bit too old to continue in touring cars, particularly as it's become really so professional now, and I was always an amateur. And what excited me when I first went to spectate at the race circuits some 20 odd years ago were the original touring cars, where of course we had cars like Galaxies, Mustangs, Falcons being chased by Lotus Cortinas, Ford Anglias, Mini Coubresses, in and out of their boot lids, etc. And I think this was one of the most exciting eras of saloon car racing ever. So what we're trying to do really is to bring back that spectacle with these cars, which are, you know, they're extremely fast in a straight line, a lot slower around the corners, and therefore can be very spectacular.
So a reminder of some of the stars from that spectacular era. Peter Hall's powerful Mustang, a 5.3-litre engine in pristine condition. There was a time around 1962 when Jaguars were the cars to beat. This Mark I is driven by Derek Goodacre. Then there's this Ford Galaxie, a monster 7-litre engine under the bonnet. Not surprisingly, speed is no problem, but things can get a touch tricky when it comes to slowing down, especially on this tight Brands Hatch Indy circuit.
The sprint track is a bit hard, but particularly on the brakes, because to compete with the smaller cars, I've got to hammer the brakes a bit, and brakes have always been the Achilles heel on this car. And indeed on all American cars, because basically we're carrying an awful lot more weight than anybody else, and they need a lot of stopping.
Talking of smaller cars, how about this? The legendary Lotus Cortina Mark I, lining up in Class B alongside the 2-litre Alfa Romeo Giulia. These, remember, from an era when they'd often drive the car to the track, race it, then drive it home again. Class C is dominated here by another old favourite, the Ford Anglia 1300 and 1500cc. And in Class D, it used to be Hillman Imps competing against Fiat Abarths. Both rear-engine saloons, all lovingly cared for, and many with a tale or two to tell. Indeed, the Abarth was something of a pioneering machine in its own way, drawing attention to aerodynamics long before the days of high-tech wind tunnels.
I think it started back in the early 60s for simply overheating or cooling, should we say, to actually get a bit more cold air in. And the story goes, and I suspect it's true, is that they found out by mistake it actually made them go faster. And it's a simple aerodynamic issue.
Right on with the action then. It's 15 laps for these historic cars around Brands Hatch. Commentator Steve Slater.
So on pole position, it's the David amongst the Goliath, the Ford Anglia of Richard Evans on pole position inside of Peter Hall's Mustang and that big 7-litre Ford Galaxie of Bob Shearing. Row 2, Ron Fielding all on his own. The Class B leader, Rod Burley, out with a bearing failure in practice. Then behind them, 3 1500cc Anglias. That's Gordon Streeter, Chris Ferson and Glenn Maskell. Behind them, the very quick 1-litre Hillman Imp of Roger Benson. But all the drivers' eyes on the lights. They go to green, and a storming start. Richard Evans out-accelerates the Detroit heavy metal into Paddock Hill Bend. The little Anglia leading the Mustang, leading the Galaxie. Ron Fielding going down inside of the Galaxie to take 3rd place. So at the head of the field, it's Richard Evans from Pete Hall. Then Ron Fielding and the Galaxie of Bob Shearing putting the squeeze on him, but it's Fielding holding on to that 3rd place. Bob Shearing down to 4th. Then it's Gordon Streeter, Chris Ferson and Glenn Maskell battling, but look at this. Shunt at Druids Corner, number 51. That's Dave Bridges, Austin A40. Look at the damage on that otherwise pristine car. Pete Ergis, the Anglia, involved as well there. Number 52, Chris Ferson heading the battle on the tail of the big Galaxie. The 3 Anglias scrapping their way down the field. Chris Ferson from Glenn Maskell, then Gordon Streeter, as the marshals rush to the assistance of Pete Ergis and Dave Bridger out at Druids Corner. But more problems. Number 87, Clive Reeder, pushes the Fiat Abarth of Jeff Devey. That is a unique X-Works car, totally original, and it's literally inches off the tyre wall at Clearways, a very narrow escape. But at the head of the field, it's number 30, Richard Evans, still in the lead from Peter Hall. Then it's Ron Fielding in the Anglia, then another battle of the Anglias, as Jeff Divvy, a very unhappy man, climbs out of the Fiat Abarth. But at the head of the field, it's still Richard Evans in that 1700cc Anglia, then the 5.3-litre Mustang of Pete Hall, then the 1340 Anglia of Ron Fielding, then the 1500 Anglias battling away behind that big 7-litre Ford Galaxie. But don't forget there are 4 races in one here, and that is the class leader in the smallest class, the 1-litre Hillman Imp of Roger Benson, storming his way past the 2-litre Alfa Romeo of Paul Wallace. Now heading round another of those Class D cars, the Fiat Abarth number 81. That's Tony Castle-Miller, the Fiat Abarth 1000 TC, but the battle at the head of the field. It is still the 1700cc Class B Anglia of Richard Evans leading the Class A 5.3-litre Rouse Sport Ford Mustang of Pete Hall. But Pete Hall using the Detroit V8 power there, pulling almost alongside the Anglia, but don't forget the Anglia weighs only 1700 weight. The Ford Mustang weighs well in excess of a ton, and a very sideways and spectacular Richard Evans hangs the tail out all the way through clearways. But again, the Detroit muscle starts to tell. Pete Hall powers his way past on the way into Paddock Hill Bend. The Mustang takes the lead. The Anglia holds on in second, but problems for another driver. Number 72, Glenn Maskell, heads into the pits. Obviously a blown engine there, but look at this, fighting back at Druids Hill Bend. The Anglia back under the brakes, takes the Mustang, regains the race lead, and another driver dropping out, Chris Ferson, 52, the Class C 1500cc Anglia out of the race. But the battle goes on at the head of the field. What a battle it is. The little Anglia, the big V8 Mustang. The Mustang's quicker down the straight. The Anglia is more nimble through the corners. And don't forget, these cars still have their 1960s braking systems, which means the big, heavy American cars are quite likely to lose their brakes by half distance. Pete Hall again challenges 120 miles an hour across the start-finish line. He's alongside, but the Anglia's later on the brakes. You can see the brake lights glowing on the Mustang. The Anglia rockets through the corner. Meanwhile, the Alfa Romeo, that's the type of car that won the European Touring Car Championship in 1965, with later Formula One driver Andrea De Adamic at the wheel. But into the pits, out of the race, a steaming Glenn Maskell. Well, Glenn Maskell obviously unhappy. The man from Chalfont St Peter walks away from his Ford Anglia, but the battles go on. This is Ralph Stevenson in the Ford Anglia, the 1-litre Hillman Imp of Adrian Oliveri, both the drivers with the yellow cross on the back of the cars in their first season of racing. But there, the race leader, the 1700cc immaculately prepared Ford Anglia of Richard Evans, the man from Cranfield in Buckinghamshire. And this is the battle for third place, the number 1 car. That's Bob Shearing's big 7-litre Ford Galaxie. And he's being challenged by the championship leader, the 1500cc Anglia of Gordon Streeter. Meanwhile, the Alfa Romeo and the Hillman Imps battle down the field there. Number 82, that's Andy Maskell. That Anglia is powered by one of the famous Holbay 1-litre Screamer engines that used to rev to over 8,000 RPM. That's Clive Reeder in the Austin A40. Those with long memories might remember that back in 1960, one of those cars won the British Touring Car Championship. But now the battle at the head of the field, the Anglia threading its way through the back markers. The big Mustang, it doesn't go through those gaps quite so easily. So good news for number 30, Richard Evans. He's pulling away at the head of the field, but out of the back markers, accelerating down the start-finish straight. Pete Hall, the former British Touring Car Championship driver at the wheel of Sierra Cosworths, now takes his Mustang back onto the tail of the Anglia. There, the battle for third place, and it's still Bob Shearing holding on in that big 2-ton 7-litre Galaxie ahead of the 1500cc Anglia of Gordon Streeter. And the battle of the 1-litre cars goes on. Now the catching one of the Lotus Cortinas. So the Alfa Romeo, former international championship car, the former British Touring Car Championship winning Lotus Cortinas. Now the A40, another former champions car, catches them up. This is brilliant retrospective racing. Across the line, the midfield scrap goes. Now that is car number 10. That's Julian Baum's big Ford Falcon Sprint. Now he's just being passed by Spencer Nash, number 34 in the Lotus Cortina. He's the Class B leader. And a spinner at Paddock Hill Bend. That is the 1 litre Hillman Imp, the overslung rear engine getting away from the driver of car number 91. Roger Benson from Rugby rejoins at the tail of the field as the leaders come through. Their battle goes on, so join us in part 2. Two wheels on the grass, and that's Paul Wallace's Alfa Romeo right on the limit as the historic Racing Saloon Car Championship race at Brands Hatch enters its final stages. The Alfa Romeo GTA on its way around the track, but into the pits. That's car number 7, Derek Goodacre's Mark I Jaguar, all over for him with continuing engine maladies. Well, the glorious looking and sounding Jaguar out of the race. The 1 litre battle continues and storming his way through it. That's the 3rd place car lapping him, the 7 litre Ford Galaxie, with right on his tail the 1500cc Ford Anglia in 4th place of Gordon Streeter. These two cars battling all the way through the race. The Galaxie now getting the chance to use its power. But this is the battle for the lead. The David among the Goliath, the little Ford Anglia 1700cc of Richard Evans, with Pete Hall's Mustang right on his tail, but over the curbs, a huge slide. He's trying to catch it, but he's lost it. Richard Evans pays the price for driving at 11/10 in that Ford Anglia to stay ahead of the Mustang and the Galaxie. He rejoins the circuit, arms flailing inside the car. He's back down to 4th place, just ahead of Ron Fielding's 1340cc Anglia. He'll be furious with himself for that error. But now in the lead, it's the Ford Mustang of Pete Hall, then the Ford Galaxie of Bob Shearing, then behind them Gordon Streeter's Anglia, and then Richard Evans and Ron Fielding battling their way through, but slowing. Richard Evans has got a problem. Let's have a look at that. In the race lead, the Class B car gets sideways at Surtees corner. He's trying frantically to catch it. It snaps from one lock to the other. The steering, the corrective lock is already there, but the car is out of control and narrowly misses the tyre wall at McLaren's corner, rejoining the circuit though with tyres spinning, but subsequently out of the race. So at the head of the field now, it's the Ford Mustang of Pete Hall, then Bob Shearing's big 7 litre Ford Galaxie, then the Anglias of Gordon Streeter and Ron Fielding. But across the line to start the last lap, it's the race leader, Pete Hall, in that 5.3 litre Mustang. But the man who set the pace for much of this race, heading into the pits and retirement. Contrast in styles, the 1 litre Hillman Imp, the 4.7 litre Ford Falcon heading through the hairpin. But this is the man on a charge in the closing stages of this race, up to 2nd place. Ron Fielding literally driving the wheels off that 1340cc Anglia, storming his way through the back markers and on to cross the line and start his last lap. There is the battle for 3rd place still going on, the David and Goliath act. Bob Shearing in the 7 litre Ford Galaxie, the championship leader Gordon Streeter in the 1500cc Anglia. But this is the race leader heading through the final corners. A superb drive in the immaculately prepared Ford Mustang. Pete Hall heads for the checkered flag at Brands Hatch. So the Mustang heading for victory, and as the checkered flag falls, it's Pete Hall taking the win from Ron Fielding in the Class C Ford Anglia, Bob Shearing 3rd in the Ford Galaxie, another Class C car, Gordon Streeter, in 4th place, and the Class B Lotus Cortina with Spencer Nash in 5th.
The cars are interesting, aren't they? You know, there's a lot of variation out there of different sorts of cars, and yeah, I'd love to have a race in that. It needs a few more cars, I suppose, of good quality out there, and make a good support for the touring car race, wouldn't it?